Okay, let's open in a word of prayer. Lord, thanks for bringing us together this week. We pray that you'll bless our time together today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I have a lot. It's starting late. I could say I'm short-staffed, but I'm always short-staffed, and there's a lot going on, and I try to stay current, and sometimes it's hard when it would be nice if the leaders of the world would sort of take a couple days off each week and take up golf or something useful and that type of thing. But anyway, so we're going to talk today about back and forth. So I've got my little Iranian chess king there with the turban on the top. So that's relevant today, I think. This is sort of what my typical Sunday morning looks like as I'm sort of analyzing the news and trying to make sense of it. We have this... Someday I'm going to get around to talking more about the SEALs and that sort of thing. I get a lot of information from people. I get a book or two a week from people that, and I don't mind that you send me stuff, that's fine. I don't have a chance to look at it all the time, but everybody's sure they've got it all figured out. The problem is nobody agrees with anybody on anything. So they could just need to be a little bit humble about how that's going to work out. So I just think that these SEALs will, when they open, and then we'll get into argument, have they opened? And some people are saying that they are. That's for a whole different topic, but the effect of each SEAL does not come about immediately. And the effect of the first SEAL, for example, the White Horse, doesn't reach its peak until after, I think, the other SEALs have already opened. And that makes, I just think that's a better way to look at it. So this is what we talk about, each week. We talk about acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. And that as we get closer to the end, I think we'll have a better idea as to how all of this fits together. I think we're getting some better pictures, particularly in the Middle East. So I'm going to spend most of the time talking about Israel and the Middle East this week. I'd encourage everybody to vote in the upcoming election. Of course, that's up to your conscience. But I'm reading, by the way, I have no predictions. I have that's kind of a fool's errand, I think, to make a prediction in this environment as to what's going to happen. And by the way, if the AI bots that send me all these texts about contributing to campaigns, I voted already, so you can stop. I don't think that'll stop. In fact, once I went and voted, I got more texts this week about, we need money. More than anything. So we're going to talk about the Middle East. And then I have some other things on the tech side and a big important meeting that took place in Kazan, Russia this week. So let's kind of put things in context. Remember, it was just about 4 weeks ago, not quite 4 weeks ago, that Iran sent 180 ballistic missiles into Israel. It was the largest ballistic missile attack by one country against another country at one time in human history. It was a very significant attack. Israel, as best as I can determine, I don't think when these things happen, I don't think anybody's exactly forthcoming with what's happened exactly in their country if they've been attacked. But it appears that the attack did not do major damage. Doesn't appear that it took out planes, but there were probably 30 or 35 missiles that landed and exploded. They targeted mainly military installations, Mossad headquarters, military Air Force bases, that sort of thing. It appears that most of the missiles hit the Nevatim air base down in the Negev in the south of Israel. And that's where they have a big squadron of F-35 fighters. And immediately once this attack happened, there was all the pro-Iranian propaganda channels were like, oh, the massive attack, Israel couldn't defend against anything, all this stuff landed. But some of the missiles appear to have been a form of a hypersonic missile, which means it travels at 5 times the speed of sound or more, and it can be maneuvered. And that makes it very difficult for the radar systems to pick that up and to adjust. Since then, there's been back and forth between Israel and Iran. There was an attack last night. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Israel, but before that happened, a few days, maybe less than a week before this attack, Israel had made an attack on an Iranian facility in Syria, and actually, from all reports, had put troops on the ground to go in there to attack. And there's some reports that they took prisoners in that attack, but I haven't been able to confirm that. But it was a pretty bold attack. They actually went into Syria. And I think part of the reason why if they would send special forces in there, they were going in there to try to gather intel. How's Iran manufacturing this? What's their process? That type of thing. And Israel's very good at analyzing intel. And you'll see some of that this week as I go through this update. So that happened in late September, and then Iran attacked, and then Iran said it's over. Because I think Iran is at a position where they don't really want to escalate. And as you'll see when we talk about this a little bit, Iran's really suffered some major losses in terms of its proxies. I saw a editorial cartoon. I didn't have I can't remember where I put it. Didn't have a chance to grab it, but it was kind of bloody. Showed a big, like, executioner sword that had cut off the right and left arms of Iran, of Ayatollah Khamenei. One was the hand of Hamas, one was the hand of Hezbollah. I thought that was, and I think that came from an Arab newspaper or an Arab person. So it was very, very telling and accurate as to what it had said or what it looked at. So let's go here to just some of the things that have happened this week, and then we'll go back to all the other stuff that I have. So here's an interesting article. This is from the Times of London. Israelis seek shelter as 100 Hezbollah rockets a day rain on Haifa. If you have a Red Alert app, and I would recommend that you get one, but understand it's going to drain your battery because these things, even since I've been here at church this morning, there's been a bunch of alerts going off. I use one called Zofar, like shofar, Tzofar. And it's pretty, that's another, no. But it drains my phone because it just goes off all the time. And some mornings it'll be 10, 15, 20, that sort of thing. Now, yesterday what happened was this alert. And so all those red dots are places that have an alert. If you live in that area, and if you zoom in on this, you'll see that it's confined to a specific little geographic block. All of those places, that means you're supposed to go to a shelter. Now, depending on how far you live, so this is the north, that's Haifa there, sort of just below the middle on the left, Haifa Bay and the Nahariya, and then you see Tyre up here, that's in Lebanon. So that, you can kind of tell where the Lebanese border is, the Lebanon-Israel border, because of the way it snakes around there. That's pretty accurate. But so, for example, if you're down in the Gaza region, when they were still firing rockets, like back on October 7th and before that, I went to the kibbutz at Nirim, Nirim. It's probably the kibbutz that's closest to the Gaza border. And while we were there, this is just about 2 years ago, December of 2022, The lady that spoke to, one of the ladies that spoke to us said, I love this place, but it's 95% heaven and 5% hell. Because when the rockets go off, she said, I have 10 seconds to get to a shelter. Now, some places in the north here of Israel have 5 seconds. And we have friends that live in Nahariya, and they say, when they start firing rockets at us, we have essentially no chance. Because you can sit on their deck and you can see Lebanon from where they live in Nahariya. We went to another kibbutz, and they said, well, it's better here. It's 93% heaven and 7% hell because we have 15 seconds to get to a shelter. And then I talked to some friends at their house in Efrat, and the kids said, well, we have 1 minute and 35 seconds, so no problems here, you know. But understand that this is part of the psychological battle that's going on. They keep firing these rockets, 100, 200 a day, and these people are constantly having to run back and forth to bomb shelters. And it used to be, so for example, when the Gaza rockets are fired, it was a pretty narrow band along the border where the rockets could land. They had a few rockets that could go further, but what you've seen Hezbollah do is Hezbollah keeps expanding the area. And the goal of this is to get people to leave. Now, I think that this probably has had some impact on Hezbollah's battle plan. Hezbollah's battle plan was to do what Hamas did in Gaza. Come through the tunnels, attack people, take hostages, kill them, and take them back. And Hezbollah had plans to kill 1 million people. Because it's, you know, you get down to Haifa, it's pretty populated. But those plans were thwarted, and then when they started firing all these rockets on October 8th, the day after the Gaza war started, Hamas started the Gaza war, the villages along the border, about 450 of them, villages, towns, cities, have evacuated almost 100%. Some cities up there, Kiryat Shimona, there 25,000 live there. I have friends who've been up there on tours with the military, and they say there's a restaurant there that says the only people who come here anymore. I'm still trying to run it. It's my business. It's my livelihood. But the only people that come here are soldiers. No, but it's destroyed everything up there. And so that's about 10% of the land area of Israel, the inhabitable land area. And it's just empty. But Hezbollah their goal is to displace everybody and to continue to expand that. So, but what happened though was that these red alerts went off. It wasn't really rockets. Israel had destroyed a Hezbollah base in the north, and that caused earthquake alerts. So here's a video of what happened up there in the north. You can see this massive explosion that they took, and then there's a bunch of secondary explosions with it because they're destroying a huge weapons depot of Hezbollah. So it's big enough that it caused earthquake alerts to go off in northern Israel. But the point, too, though, is these red alerts for rocket missile attacks go off all the time in the north. People are constantly running to shelters, and this is part of the psychological war. Of the 80,000 or so that have actually evacuated the north, they've surveyed them, and half of them said they're never going back. So this has a huge economic impact, and it shrinks Israel. Now, my opinion is that if you're shrinking Israel, then we're taking land that would be set aside in Area C, and we're going to settle it. And if you don't like it, tell your friends up there to stop. And I don't know what the solution is. So There's, this is an article from Al Akbar newspaper, and the essence of the article is that they want to, they're talking about shrinking everything, and then we have this guy named Amos Hochstein, and he's running around up there trying to redraw or redraft Resolution 1701. Resolution 1701 was enacted by the UN back in 2006 after the Second Lebanon War. This is the way we're going to solve the Lebanon-Israel-Hezbollah problem. And what they said was there will be no building south of the Litani River, which is about 10 kilometers from the Israel border, although in some places it's only 2.5 or 3 kilometers. It gets pretty close. And when it's a rocket can cover a kilometer in no time at all. So you don't even have 5 seconds to get to a shelter in that particular case. But nobody's enforced that. They've had international peacekeeping troops there, UNIFIL. And I don't know what UNIFIL stands for. I think it stands for incompetent or something like that. And usually when UNIFIL goes out to places, I don't know if I should tell that. Well, I'll tell it. I used to represent railroads. And so we do a lot of employee injury litigation. And a lot of times those would involve guys who were on rail gangs. You know, they have a camp of cars, like dormitory cars, and the guys would go out and they would work on the rail and they would live in those dormitory cars. And I've met these guys, and they didn't always act in the best way. And so it was sort of like, if you know there's a rail gang in your area, lock up your women folk because it's not safe. And that's similar to what UNIFIL is. What UNIFIL is really good at is not keeping the peace or anything. It's getting sex abuse allegations against them. So that's part of this. Now, so I'm going to do a little bit of because of the players in the area, I don't know how to organize this, to be honest with you, because there's so much going on. So I've sort of got my little chess pieces now that I've made up. I've got the Iranian one with the turban on, that's on the right, and then the Russian one on the left with the onion dome. Because with Putin, this is a religious war that he's involved in. He is very much about promoting Mother Russia and the Russian Orthodox Church. That is his philosophical base. And the BRICS meeting this week that I'm going to talk about in a little bit actually occurred in one of the most important Russian Orthodox cities in their theological construct. So Russia has been involved in this area, and what Russia's been doing is they've actually been helping the Houthis with targeting data. So Russia is not Israel's friend. Russia has been giving satellite and other information to help the Houthis attack ships in the Red Sea. Now, part of that is because Russia has other economic interests. They are working with Iran to develop a corridor to sort of take the shipping things that would go through the Red Sea to go through Russia over to Europe. They've already worked extensively, I talked about this years ago, with China on the Belt and Road Initiative, and at, can't remember the name of the town out there in Kazakhstan, someplace. It's a city. It's the largest inland port in the world. It's where they do a lot of transfer of rail traffic from China to Russia. But the problem is Russia uses a narrower gauge. So everything has to be taken off the train and put on a train that fits the right gauge. Then it has to be taken off and put on a European gauge train at the end. But Russia wants all that traffic. So they've worked with China to do that, and now they're working with Iran to do that up through the Persian Gulf region. So their interest would be, yeah, we don't want people going through the Red Sea. We want them going through our place because, you charge transit fees. That's how you make a lot of money. That's the lifeblood of Egypt. They get, I think it's 20% of their government revenues, maybe more, from the transit fees through the Suez Canal. And with that being shut down to a large extent, it's having a huge impact on the economy of Egypt and causing a lot of unrest in Egypt. And Russia doesn't really care about that. There's also, with the Ukrainian civil war, the Ukrainian war, there's a lot of things flying around. Russia's threatening nuclear war. Russia's been doing nuclear exercises, moving missiles around. And they're threatening nuclear war with the West. That would include Europe and us. And now there's this satellite images, this is from the Washington Post, that there are upgrades at a Russian lab site, biolab site. Remember all the allegations about the biolabs in Ukraine? So I don't doubt that Ukraine had biolabs, by the way. It's an agricultural country. There are biolabs all over the United States. The question is, what are you doing at the biolabs? And Russia made these allegations, and Russia's very good at doing propaganda. And it really messes with people's heads. And Trevor Loudon has done some great work on this recently. So Russia said, oh, we got these biolabs in Ukraine. We'll make everything think that they're making exotic viruses or something there. And maybe they were, but Russia's been in control of a lot of those now for almost 2 years, over 2 years. And my question is, where's the proof? You've had control of you understand this is the way Russia works. They create the problem and it sets the narrative in place. For example, with the storms down in North Carolina, and by the way, if you can help out, there's still people that need a lot of help down there. And I just don't think, it's strange to me that the media is not covering this very much. And there are a lot of people missing and there's no death tolls or anything. I follow the news pretty closely, and it's like, it's been memory hold. Nobody wants to pay attention to that. But one of the allegations was there's a lithium mine. They want to destroy the land so they can get this lithium mine. Well, the lithium mine already existed. And then BlackRock did buy stock in the company that owned the lithium mine. That's what BlackRock does. They buy stock in companies. But then the allegation came out, and I saw video after video, and I just saw somebody posting yesterday that Kamala Harris and her husband own over half of the stock of BlackRock. This is absolute nonsense. It's propaganda. But people, they don't bother to look. Okay, Kamala Harris and her husband do have, $6, $8, $9 million that they've saved up over their careers. Kind of interesting for somebody who's been mostly a public servant, but he works for a big law firm in DC. And they have a lot of that invested in BlackRock. But somebody took that, but BlackRock controls assets of like $11-12 trillion. Kamala Harris and her husband don't control that much. They might have $6 million of BlackRock stock. But people just throw this stuff out there like it's gospel truth. And by the way, the lithium mine, I think I've established this, the lithium mine that everybody was talking about, that some of these clickbait guys, the crisis guys, is this thing's it's the worst thing in the world. The lithium is right under Asheville. And it's not under Asheville. It's 95 miles away is where the mine is. Look it up. Go to the company's website. But it was just, people bought it. And I see people still talking about it, and I just don't think it's true. So Russia's doing this. They're upgrading a lab site. Some people are concerned it's about bioweapons. And I think it's a valid concern. This was a press conference that Putin had, and the guy at the BBC asked a question, and I'm not a big fan of the BBC, by the way. There's a report out called the Asserson Report, trying to get the attorney to get an interview with him that wrote this. The BBC, when they're talking about Gaza and Hamas, they violated their standards, their ethical standards on how to report things there at least 1,500 times in the opening months of since October 7th through April. Because they're just a bunch of leftist lunatics. So this was kind of an interesting news conference. I'm not going to go through it, but the guy asked a question like, hey, President Putin, you, and if you remember, I interviewed Mary Eisen a couple weeks ago, and she said in another interview, I think I played the clip of it, she said she worked for the Israeli prime minister. She traveled with the prime minister at the time, and she got to meet some of the world leaders. She said, of all the world leaders I met, the only one that really was scary was Vladimir Putin. And I think that she's probably right in that assessment. So this was a pretty brave question in Russia, asking Putin this, like, hey, so you said there were problems in the Donbass before the special military operation, but back in those days, nobody was occupying any land in Russia like the Ukrainians are now. No one was firing drones deep into Russia. Nobody was hitting office buildings in Moscow with drones or missiles. So did you really accomplish anything? And if you watch this whole thing, you can find it on the BBC website. You can see that he gets a little bit irritated. And I was like, I don't know if I would be. So I give the guy props for asking a pretty tough question to Putin. And I don't think he gave a very good answer, but that's just my opinion. What do I know? Now, the other thing that's happening, though, is there are now supposedly 3,000 to 10,000 North Korean troops in Ukraine to help out. Russia sort of has the same military doctrine that Iran has. So that's why Iran uses proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shia militias in Iraq, Shia militias in Syria, and Hamas in Gaza. And I think it was Jonathan Spire said, yeah, the Iranian doctrine is we will fight till the last non-Persian in these things. So we're going to use proxies. And so the Russians use the same, we'll fight to the last non-Russian guy because we don't want to use our own people. But good estimates are that 1 million people have died in this Ukraine conflict. And we don't really even talk about it. It's hard to get the numbers. But it could be hundreds of thousands of people on both sides of this. This is a very, very big deal. Now the North Koreans are coming in to help out because, look, baby Kim here needs cash. He wants his troops to get experience. So let's do this. And plus, if he's having problems at home, he's sending his soldiers somewhere else to help out, and people will focus on that rather than the fact that they don't have a lot to eat in North Korea because baby Kim takes a lot of it looks like. And I hear he's in bad health. But then again, I don't know if that's bad propaganda. And by the way, when you see these things with Putin and that type of thing, there's been these allegations all along that Putin's near death, he's got cancer, he's in bad shape. But I watched the videos from the BRICS. This is news conference, went for quite a while. There was a big meeting, you'll see some clips of it here in a moment, near the end of this. He sits there for like 3.5 hours. He's 72 years old. I don't even think he gets up to go to the bathroom. So you got to kind of admire that. Now, it doesn't appear he ever has a glass of water, so I don't know if I don't know, maybe he's got some kind of special apparatus or something, but it's pretty amazing. But he's not ill. But then again, I don't know if the allegations that he was sick didn't come from Russia originally anyway, because it makes him more sympathetic, and he'll get away with a lot more because people think, well, he's dying anyway, so what's the big deal? So I don't even know if you can believe, you just don't know where it's coming from. And so this is foreign policy, that this is a big deal. This is a third country entering into the Ukrainian conflict, overtly entering. And this is a picture of the capital of North Korea when Putin was there back in June, and you can see they have Putin posters all over the place. Here's what the foreign policy says. The deployment of 10,000 or so North Korean troops to Russia marks a sharp escalation and internationalization of Europe's biggest war in generations, with potential impacts on the battlefield in Europe and in Northeast Asia. It's an embarrassing come down for Moscow, bad news for Ukraine, and a very scary development for South Korea and the rest of the world. And South Korea is concerned about this. And by the way, I think in California, I'm going to talk it's a week from Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Temecula. I think about talking about demographics. South Korea has some of the worst demographics in the world. Their birth rate is like 1.2. You need 2.1 to replace yourself. If you're at 1.2 or 1.1, you're going to be half the size in a generation. And and this is happening all over the world. It's a very big thing. I think it's an important part of the end times, because it makes people motivated to do something to preserve their legacy, and it's irreversible. China says, oh, we got to turn around and all this stuff, and Japan doesn't even bother with it now. And so you're going to see they're going to push AI robots and all this stuff, because they're going to do the stuff that people can't do. And I'm getting old, and you know that you just don't do as much as you used to when you were 50 or 60. And who's going to do the stuff that you need to have done? So this all plays into a whole bunch of things. So Israel's fighting a war on 7 fronts. So you see Israel here, and here's one of the fronts is the Houthis in Yemen, here at the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula. And then the other fronts are more close in. You have Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which we never hear about anymore, in Gaza, and to some extent in the area called the West Bank, which is biblical Judea and Samaria. You have the red pawn there. I use pawns because they're pawns of Iran. Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, huge problems in that area. So you have Houthis 1, Gaza 2, Judea Samaria 3, Syria, Shia rebels, that's 4, Hezbollah in Lebanon is 5, Iraq, Shia militias, that's a popular mobilization front. One of the groups in Iraq is 6, Iran is 7. But that's 7. I think there are 8. And here's an example of number 8. So this is, Two Wires or something is the name of the website, and they have a very good article just published the other day, how Wikipedia's pro-Hamas editors hijack the Israel-Palestinian narrative. And they talk about the fact that they go in and, Wikipedia, you can go in and edit the articles. And so they have like teams of people that go in and edit everything about Palestine and Israel to give it a pro-Palestinian spin. And they go in and they edit historical Wikipedia entries and that type of thing. And it's complete, total propaganda lies that they're doing, and they're weaponized to do it. And this article picked up on that. So let's look a little bit about what happened this week. This is early, it was like last Sunday it came out. that secret papers from the U.S. had detailing Israel's possible attack plans on Iran had been leaked to the press, or they've been leaked to somebody who put them on a pro-Iranian Telegram channel. And it appears there's an FBI investigation that's been opened about it. I'm sure they'll be doing a very unbiased investigation like they've been doing on things for the last few years. But it appears that these came from within the Biden administration, somebody in that apparatus. There is a lady that works at the Department of Defense. She has now been appointed as something like counterterrorism trainer at the Department of Defense. And she was up in the Pentagon echelon, and now she's been promoted or transferred over to this. She's very pro-Iranian. She's worked with Iranian front groups before to push the Iranian agenda, and she got promoted. And my question is this another example of what happened when President Trump was coming into office the last time? A president can appoint around 3,000, 3,500 political appointees. They have to be approved by the Senate. So it takes them a little while to get up and running. But what the Obama administration did before Trump came in was a lot of those political appointees were moved over to jobs where you can't fire them. They're protected by the rules, the law. And so my question is she one of the ones that's being moved over just in case Trump is elected again in a couple weeks, as if we're going to know in a couple weeks that the election is over? I don't know. I suspect that that's the case. And so you need to be very cognizant of that. So Hezbollah, they keep going. This is the article in the New York Times. This is foreign policy again. Israel's killing of Sinwar is not a turning point, and there's a big controversy. Everybody argues about it. Does it make any sense to take out the leadership? Because there's just going to be somebody come along behind them and replace them. But sometimes the biggest ideologues rise to the top of these organizations, like Sinwar, and then they took out Hania. And so they combined Hania's position into Sinwar. Now Sinwar is gone, and the question is who's going to come in to replace them? Israel's done phenomenal in Gaza. This is the most deeply embedded terror base ever found by anybody in human history. Hundreds of miles of tunnels, supply lines from Egypt, and Egypt's, the people in Egypt are skimming millions off the top and controlling things and bringing weapons in and getting a cut of that. And that's why Israel wanted to go into Rafah, because that's where those tunnels from Egypt were. Egypt has the show of this phenomenal border wall and fence, but it's not really, it's like Swiss cheese, because there's big holes underneath that you can drive trucks through, the tunnels. So I don't know. I think that taking out the leadership is a good thing. And Israel's sort of demonstrating this in Lebanon. They took out Nasrallah, and then they appointed this guy, Hashem Safadine, and he was martyred within a couple days of being appointed. And that was just confirmed this week by some, and they always use him. He was a martyr like Hezbollah, Nasrallah at Hezbollah. He was a martyr of Al-Quds Road. He was murdered on the road to Jerusalem. And that's what this thing is about. And they use that Dome of the Rock image everywhere you look. And so this is from Ayatollah Khomeini's website on the left. The courageous Mujahid Sayyid Safadine joins the ranks of martyrs. And then this was the newspaper this week at the Tehran Times confirming that he'd been taken out. And he was taken out back in early October. And they just got around to confirming it. And I don't think they've had a funeral for Nasrallah yet. And I think they're not doing it, in part because they're smart enough to know that Israel will use that as a major intelligence gathering opportunity. So this is the Tehran Times. Sinwar's war continues, and then from Ayatollah Khamenei's website just this morning about how courageous he was. He was a martyr, and it shows him sitting in that chair, of course, but in this one he has his arm, and the other one he didn't. So this was kind of an interesting, this is going to go for a few minutes. This is IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, and what he's doing is he's exposing the finance hub of Hezbollah.
Tonight, we're exposing Hezbollah's financial network and how Hezbollah uses it to fund its terrorist activities. In recent years, the state of Lebanon has experienced a deep financial crisis, which was exploited by Hezbollah. Hezbollah's main financial arm is the Al-Qard Al-Hassan Association. It provides financial services to Lebanese civilians and pays the salaries of Hezbollah's operatives. Al-Qard Al-Hassan, which violates the international law, is sanctioned by the United States and other Western countries. Hezbollah's financial network is based on two main sources of income: money from the Iranian regime and money from the Lebanese people. Iran's Quds forces transfer money to Hezbollah from Iranian oil sold in Syria. Iran also sends suitcases of cash and gold by planes to the Iranian embassy in Beirut, and then directly it goes to Hezbollah. Hezbollah has also built factories in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and in Turkey that provide income for its terrorist operations. Hezbollah Unit 4400 manages this financial network. It was run by Jafar Ksir, also known as Sheikh Salah, until he was eliminated in a precise strike in Beirut at the beginning of October. Today, in another precise strike in Syria, we have eliminated his successor. The IDF will not allow Hezbollah to regroup and rearm. Not only is this Iranian money used to kill Israelis, it also threatens the Lebanese economy. As Hezbollah continues to smuggle Iranian money into Lebanon in dollars, it devalues the Lebanese pound, making the economic crisis in Lebanon even worse. Another source of income for Hezbollah is the citizens of Lebanon. Hezbollah makes money for Lebanese citizens by offering them financial services through the Al-Qard Al-Hassan Association. Last night, we called on Lebanese civilians to move out of harm's way from Hezbollah's financial facilities across Lebanon, including in the Dakhia area. We published these warnings in Arabic, on social media, and also through other channels. The Israeli Air Force carried out a series of precise strikes on these Hezbollah financial strongholds. One of our main targets last night was an underground vault with millions of dollars in cash and gold. The money was being used to finance Hezbollah's attacks on Israel. This vault was deliberately located under a residential building. Our strikes will degrade Hezbollah's ability to finance its attacks on Israelis. Tonight, I am going to declassify intelligence on a site that we did not strike, where Hezbollah has millions of dollars in gold and cash. In Hassan Nasrallah's bunker. Where is the bunker located? Directly under El Sahel Hospital, in the heart of Beirut, in the Dakhia. This is the hospital. From both sides you can see an entry and exit. Those are entry and exit tunnel shafts from the underground bunker. The entrance is located in the Al-Mahdi building, and the exit is located in the El Sahel Center building. This is the bunker. It contains rooms, beds, and infrastructure for long stays, and the ability to direct combat from underground. Hezbollah built this bunker directly underneath this hospital. There are hundreds of millions of dollars in cash and gold inside the bunker right now. I'm calling on the Lebanese government, Lebanese authorities, and the international organizations. Don't allow Hezbollah to use the money for terror and to attack Israel.
Now, this is a kind of a brilliant psychological operation, because what they're doing is they're saying, okay, folks, we know you people, this is the subtext that they don't say out loud, we know you people in Lebanon, you don't have no money, your economy's in the dumper, you don't have electricity, you only have electricity if you know somebody, somebody has a generator, the banks aren't open, the currency isn't worth anything, but they got gold and cash here in this bunker. And that has a couple of effects. People will say, well, how did Hezbollah get all that money in gold? That's not fair. I don't like Hezbollah having money in gold when I don't. And then the people that work for Hezbollah are saying, hey, we're not getting paid. Maybe I should go get my salary directly myself, self-help. And I like the Wall Street Journal, but this, sometimes I wonder who's running their editorial board. They put up this article, and the headline is, Israeli accusation imperils Beirut hospital. Now listen, he never said it was in the hospital. He said it was in a bunker under the hospital. So what did we see? We see a parade of all these these communications majors that ended up working for media organizations that didn't really have to write anything or think through a problem. They just write the script they read the script that somebody gives them. I'm sorry, that sounds kind of as a put down. And so they're parading, they're going through the hospital, they're taking film crews down through the basement. There's no gold or cash here. There's treatment rooms and that. Folks, it wasn't in the hospital, it was in a bunker underneath the hospital. By the way, other media did report that they got to some big steel doors in a couple places, and there were Corleone mafia type family guys guarding the entrance, guarding the doors. I'm sure that was just, I'm not sure what they had on the side, stock of chicken soup or something. But the media just played along, and they got played by Iran and Hezbollah to be propaganda, and the Wall Street Journal fell for it. Now, also in southern Lebanon, this is from the Times of Israel, and this is an article by one of their terror guys, and he's saying, listen, we went to a Lebanese border village, and they took us through these tunnels. The tunnel was 2 kilometers long, that's 1.2 miles. And this thing had been built over a period of about 15 years. It had dormitories, it had bed space, it had weapons stores, you can see the electrical lines, electrical junction boxes, weapons. I think you'll see a shower here. Yeah, here's a shower. I even had a hot water heater on the wall there. And so they're planning to do this, and they're going to take people, come across the border, take people back through these tunnels, and you can see they're embedded. They're drilled through bedrock and that type of thing. So here is this article about 1701 with Amos Hochstein, and the title of the article is, Does Hochstein Have a Different Israeli Vision? The resistance is preparing for an Israeli escalation before the U.S. elections. So the Hezbollah people think we're going to have an escalation from Israel before the U.S. elections. And then there are people saying, well, Israel doesn't really want to escalate things before the elections because it might affect how the election goes. But then again, we have people that are leaking plans, always these leaks to people in the press about what Israel's going to do or planning on doing. And I would just say, I think Netanyahu and the government have sort of reached the position that we're going to do what we need to do to protect Israel, and we'll tell the U.S. about it later, maybe. We don't need their permission to do anything. We're a sovereign country. But, Biden's out there, well, we're making peace in the Middle East. And then Kamala Harris has, if anybody can figure out what her position is on Israel, let me know, okay? Actually, if you can figure out her position on anything, let me know. I think the best part of that Bret Baier interview of her was, you said, Madam Vice President, that the country is on the wrong track. Yes, she said, yes. But you've been running the track for the last 3.5 years. Well, we know that this is about Donald Trump. He's been running for president for a long time. Yeah, but you've been in charge for the last 3.5 years. She goes, well, we're going to do more than we've already done. It was pretty bad. This is sort of related to these articles. This is from Open Source Intel. These are just people that read the news sort of like I do and try to figure out what's going on. Hezbollah is reportedly facing an unprecedented wave of defections in southern Lebanon, prompting it to deploy reinforcements to counter Israel's ground operations. According to Saudi newspaper Elof, and sometimes Elof's not always reliable, so take it with a grain of salt, many of Hezbollah's regular and reserve members have fled the south with their families, with some relocating to Syria. Now, why would this be? I think it's partly the exposure of the Hezbollah bunker with the gold and cash. They're not getting paid. And they're like, I'm not getting paid. I'm not going to stand around here and do this for nothing. I have a family to feed. And then here's this, I meant to put this article. This is the daring raid on a secret lab in Syria started the drive against Hezbollah. And so the question is, how does this all play into end times Bible prophecy? Well, I think the Psalm 83 passage is very important and significant. It talks about, this is from a screenshot from the King James. When you look at the nations, the people identified in Psalm 83, you have Tyre, Sidon, you have Gebal, which I think is Saudi Arabia. Some people would put it up there north of Sidon. I'm not so sure. Some indication it might be Saudi Arabia. You have Iraq, Assyria, area of the United Arab Emirates. I'm just wondering if this doesn't play into this Abraham Accords thing somehow. And so that if Israel defeats Hezbollah in Lebanon, that the people that are left there would say, hey, we want to have peace with Israel too. We'll come into the Abraham Accords. So, and here's an overlay of where the tribe was, and you can see Edom, Moab, Ammon, which is modern day Jordan. So just pay attention to that. I'm not entirely certain. So here's the last 24, 48 hours, big attack by Israel on Iran. I will confess, when I first saw the reports of it, I was my feed was full of all the pro-Iranian, pro-Hezbollah people, anti-Israel people saying, oh, it was a nothing burger, nothing happened. And even some Israeli people were saying the same thing. And the answer is we don't know what happened because Israel hasn't come forth with a lot of information. But this is Jerusalem Post this morning. Israeli Air Force stuns Iraq with historic strike on army sites. Like Iran attack on Israel on October 1st on military sites, it appears that that's what Israel struck in Iran Friday night into Saturday. And it's pretty amazing. But of course, here's the Wall Street Journal again. Israel strikes Iran, expanding war. Well, the war's already there, guys. Where have you been for the last 40 years? And this is a big article in the Wall Street Journal again. Iran strikes on Iran while measured push region deeper into a dangerous era. It already was a dangerous era. People are wondering, like, well, what's going on? This is foreign policy. Why isn't Hezbollah making a more massive attack response to what Israel's doing in southern Lebanon? The IDF comes out a couple weeks ago and says, we've done 700 raids into southern Lebanon over the last year, since October 8th. Not in the press anywhere. And it appears when they go into these tunnels and everything, the Hezbollah people have fled, and sometimes very recently because there's still coffee on the stove or in the coffee pot. And maybe they're quitting. Maybe they're leaving and going somewhere else and regrouping. I don't know. It's very dangerous. There's a number you can see just from the front page of the Jerusalem Post. Today, there were another 9 or 10 IDF soldiers killed. And some of these are older. For example, one of the guys killed was 42 years old, 6 children. And this is having a huge impact on Israeli society. Everybody knows somebody who's been killed. I saw Hillel Fuld. I follow him on Twitter. He's Ari Fold's brother. Do you remember Ari Fuld, the big sort of super Zionist guy, really big IDF reservist, and he loved Israel and that type of thing. And he got stabbed there at Gush Etzion shopping center near Efrat where they lived and killed. That was 6 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. And Ari Fuld was larger than life. So his brother Hillel, I give him credit, he's really picked up on his Twitter account, putting a lot of information up. But he said, look, one of these guys who got killed up there, I cried harder than I have since Ari's funeral. And go look up Ari's funeral online and watch the family and how they react, because they always have the funeral within 24 hours if they can. And I remember Hillel being there and just distraught, ripped shirt and everything. Incredibly powerful moment as this larger-than-life guy was taken out by a teenager stabbing him in the neck or in the back and severing his aorta. But Ari got up and neutralized him, as they say, before he collapsed and died. But he said, there's a young guy from our community. He built my pergola. He built everything. He was a great carpenter, and now he's gone. And he was like everybody's son. And this story is being repeated over and over and over again. And Israel doesn't have an endless supply of people. There's political pressure to get the ultra-Orthodox to come into the service, and I think something's going to be done on that pretty quickly. So this front page of the New York Times this morning, and here you see this poster in Revolution Square in Tehran. And it's all over the place now. I don't remember if I talked here about it or I talked in an interview with somebody the other day about it. But here's the poster. And so this is a representation of the October 1st attack by Iran on Israel. You see the missiles coming in. But what do you see? And here's what the poster says. You translate the Persian and Hebrew. By the way, it's in Hebrew, except for the top line. Oh, I copied the wrong thing. Oh, wait, maybe I do have it here. No, I don't. It just says, we're at war, we're strong, and you're toast, and this is just the beginning, is what it says. That's the Haller Hebrew interpretation, which is pretty pathetic, but I thought I copied the Hebrew one, and I copied the Hebrew one. I thought I copied the English translation. My editor took the morning off. But look at this. But what do you see in this poster? This is Jerusalem, right? There's the Dome of the Rock. So my question is, we always wonder, well, how do they build this temple? By the way, There are guys up on the Temple Mount sounding the shofar recently. They did a water libation, guys in the priestly garments. There's a model of the Ark of the Covenant in Israel, right in Jerusalem right now. And they're making plans for this. And the question is, how do they get rid of the Dome of the Rock? Well, maybe those missiles aren't so well directed. And maybe their own missile takes it out, gets the targeting information messed up. There's been a leak. There was a leak of a letter from Lloyd Austin to our defense secretary, to the Israeli defense minister Gallant, saying, listen, you guys, we may withhold weapons that you need from you if you don't get more aid into Gaza. Well, the problem with putting aid into Gaza is Hamas steals it, sells it, makes money. So Israel says, look, if we spend aid in there and it gets stolen by, you're just funding Hamas. We don't care. The U.S. says, we don't care. You got to get aid to people in Gaza. And even though they keep finding these UNRWA employees embedded with Hamas and serving in Hamas. And now Blinken, this is in the Friday Jerusalem Post, he's hinting that the U.S. might limit Israeli military aid. So the very simple solution to this, if you don't think that's a wise thing to do, vote against the people that hire guys like him. So this attack was pretty amazing. It was a multi-wave attack. It went across, don't know the exact routes, but let's just say they went across Jordan and Iraq. And they took out an installation in Syria on the way, air defense thing. They went and they took out different types of things like air defense headquarters, ballistic missile manufacturing, military manufacturing, radar installations, surface to air. And it was a pretty amazing thing. And some people are wondering whether Israeli aircraft even entered Iranian airspace. This thing took several hours. If they were in Iranian airspace for several hours. By the way, all the jets that left came back. And Iran supposedly has these great Russian S-300 and S-400 air defense systems. I've heard they might have 8 of these, and at least seven of them were destroyed in this attack. But what Israel did too is they put air missile launchers from the air, launchers that can launch while below the airplane. And so they could go close to the Iranian border, not into Iran. They could launch the missiles and then leave. But this pretty amazing attack that they did, I mean, it's about 1,000 miles each way. They had to do the air refueling. Now, they may have got some U.S. air refueling assistance. So it was an amazing attack. And there is some indication that they did a very good job of disabling the air defense systems of Iran, so that if they decide to do something in the near future, which I think they probably will, they may wait till after our election, they may have free rein to do that. Now, Iran's come out, they've made all these, it's a propaganda war. So we have this is from the Tehran Times, 1,000 Iranian missiles ready for a potential Israeli attack, says U.S. media. So even the Tehran Times quotes the New York Times. And somehow the New York Times, so Iran says, they're sort of implying, we don't even really know this, but the New York Times must be accurate because we have 1,000 missiles ready to attack. That's more than 5 times the amount that came in on October 1st. And they have the physical capacity to do that. They have these underground bunkers, underground air bases. And it's funny when you see them do the underground air bases, they have these F-4 fighters that are like 50 years old that were bought by the Shah back in the 70s. So will they be able to repel the attack? The Ayatollah Khamenei And this is in the Jewish News Syndicate. Iran said to be fearful after Israel hits the missile program and air defenses. Again, they're citing the New York Times. In that here's an anti-Iranian government said Israel's Saturday attacks on Iran destroyed air defense systems protecting critical oil and petrochemical refineries, as well as systems guarding a large gas field and a major port in southern Iran, according to 3 Iranian and 3 senior Israeli defense officials cited by the New York Times. Here's Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel's air attack on Iran was precise and powerful and achieved all of our goals. The Iran foreign minister came out and said, you can't do this, we'll respond. And then here's Hillel Fold saying this on his Twitter account this morning or yesterday. They are worried, and as they should be. 3 Iranian officials told the New York Times that the destruction of their air defense systems by Israel caused deep concern in Iran. The concern stems from the fact that Iran's vital energy and economic centers are now exposed to future attacks if the exchange of blows between Israel and Iran continues. According to Hamid Hosseini, an expert in Iran's oil and gas industry and a member of the Iran-Iraq Chamber of Commerce, Israel is sending a clear message. This could have dire economic consequences for Iran, and now that we understand the risks, we must act wisely and not raise the tensions. So this is a back and forth. You know, Israel doesn't want to escalate too far to provoke a big response from Iran. Israel came out and said, we're done. We did what we wanted to do. And now, of course, the Ayatollah has to come out. He was tweeting this morning, we must show the Zionists the power initiative of the Iranian people. The second topic relates to their evil doing 2 nights ago. This is a speech that he gave yesterday. Well, the Zionist regime made a wrong move. And of course, they keep magnifying what they've done. Their magnification of the matter is wrong, but also bear in mind that downplaying it is wrong too. If we say, no, it wasn't anything, it wasn't important, that too is wrong. It almost sounds like he's having a conversation with himself. It's like, I don't really know what to say. I might be wrong, I might be right. The Zionist regime's miscalculations must be stopped. They're making a miscalculation with respect to Iran. They don't know Iran. They don't know the Iranian youth. No, they probably do. They don't know the Iranian people. They still haven't been able to correctly understand the power, capability, initiative, and determination of the Iranian people. We must make them understand these things. Yes, yes, yes. You can see the enthusiasm that he generates there. And he said this is another, he just put this up a little bit before I came in here. We must make the Zionists understand the power of the Iranian people. Now, this is very interesting. The bunch of reports this morning that Khamenei is very ill. And this is from Hamas Atrocities. It's actually a pretty good Twitter account to follow. This cancer has been diagnosed with cancer. News about Israel poisoning his tea will be dropping in 3, 2, 1. And part of that comes from this morning's, I think it's this morning's New York Times, which says he is believed to be seriously ill. So everybody's running with this quote from the New York Times today. I mean, everybody in the world is running with it. So I figured I might as well go along with it. Here's the Tehran Times today. Iran's storm is looming. Iran has no limits in defending its territorial integrity. I think that's their foreign minister. There was also a terror attack in northern Israel, 30 wounded, truck ran into a bus. And I believe there were some people killed in that. So let me talk about the BRICS. So that, I don't know what Iran's response is going to be, if there's going to be a response. I don't think we've seen the last of Israel in responding to this, but there was a very important meeting. So there's a lot of question about our economy, the dollar. The dollar is the reserve currency of the world, and there's this organization, and it was given this name years ago, like 15, 16 years ago. They were just kind of meeting together to try to do some joint economic development. It was Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Well, with the sanctions that the U.S. put on Russia, Russia has been leading a way to go after, to kind of get rid of the dollar. And part of the problem with putting sanctions on everybody in the world, which our government has been doing, is if you're the reserve currency of the world, people will go leave your currency because they don't like being sanctioned. They don't like having their bank accounts frozen and that sort of thing. So they had a big meeting in Kazan, Russia this week, Wednesday through Friday, and everybody was there. Well, not everybody. There not really anybody from Europe. Here's the guy from the Sheikh, the president of the United Arab Emirates. And it's always funny. I love the tables in Russia. So this is sort of the smaller table, and I think they have you'll see a bigger table later. They have a really big table where it's in Kazan, Russia, and that's a very important thing to the Russian Orthodox Church. You may have heard me talk about this many years ago. I was reading a publication at the time, I don't even know if it's still around or not, Investors Business Daily. Wait a minute, they were going to say, what does Investors Business Daily have to do with the Russian Orthodox Church in Kazan, Russia? I'm going to tell you. The article said, in Investor Business Daily, it says, there was a flight around the Crimean Peninsula back in 2014, and it's believed that Putin had put an icon, the most famous icon in the Russian Orthodox Church, the Lady of Kazan, on a plane and flew it around the Crimean Peninsula before Russia invaded Crimea to take it back. And so I started researching this icon. They don't know if they have the original anymore. They think they might, but how Russia, it disappeared for a long time. And then there was a phone call made by the Brotherhood, Sisterhood of Fatima, Portugal, where they had that vision. The Shepherd kids had that vision back around 1917 or so. And supposedly there's a prophecy that they got about Russia, that the Pope would consecrate Russia to the world. And the people from Fatima called John Paul II and said, hey, we got this Lady of Kazan icon here in Fatima, so they sent it to the Vatican. So Putin, about 20 years ago, goes to see John Paul II. He's very frail. And sitting on the table between them is this Lady of Kazan icon. Very strange thing, but it ended up back in Russia. John Paul II was going to take it, but he was too old to go, so he had a cardinal take it, and they had a big leaving the Vatican ceremony and coming to Russia ceremony. And then Putin takes this icon, supposedly, and flies it around the Crimean Peninsula before he invades Crimea. And this is how the Russians have used that icon. It led the Russians into war, I think, against Napoleon. And like I said, it disappeared, may have been redone, but some people think that the original is actually there. But John Paul II prayed to that icon, the icon of the Virgin Mary. It's called Our Lady of Kazan, the Black Madonna. He prayed to that in his private chapel every day. It was his favorite icon. And so I just thought it was very strange that I was reading about this in the Investors Business Daily. So the president of Iran was there. Tehran Times, this is a golden opportunity. Here you see Modi from China, South Africa, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Iran, Belarus, Azerbaijan, Armenia, everybody and their, I guess everybody and their brother. There's one sister that made it in there somehow. But so they had these meetings, press conferences. That was what I showed you before was the big table. This was the smaller table for the restricted meeting. Where did they get these things, by the way? That's, I guess, does IKEA have like the giant table collection or something? And of course, here's Mahmoud Abbas. There's Putin at a press conference. There's Erdogan. There's Xi from China. Here's the big table again. And you can see, and by the way, this thing goes on. You can find the video on the Kremlin website with English transcript, English subtitles, English translation. And so they're having this big talk. We need to do something to fight against the dollar. And they're proposing using some kind of new currency. Now, the problem is replacing the dollar as the world reserve currency will be difficult. There's Guterres from the UN is there, of course. I think you'll see Abbas in just a moment. You see Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, there behind Putin. And Putin's running this thing for like 3.5 hours. It's pretty amazing. That was the guy from, I think that was Armenia. Here's the guy from the United Arab Emirates. There's Abbas. So it's sort of like a who's who. There's Congo. It's like a who's who of all these people who don't like the West. There's a guy from Azerbaijan, Xi from China, and they all, having watched a few of these things now, Putin has a very high boredom tolerance. You know, that he can sit there at these meetings and not fall asleep. But I guess when you're plotting taking over the world, it's kind of gives you a little bit of extra shot of energy. It's like having a 5-hour energy of world power. I don't know what that's like, but I assume it would be kind of invigorating. So they had this meeting in Kazan, Russia this week, and they're talking about, the problem is they have to agree on a currency. They have to agree what's going to back the currency. They're talking about doing some commodities like grain, maybe oil. They're sort of talking about gold a little bit, but I don't know how. The goal is to replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency, because that will really hurt the United States. It really would. It would really change our lifestyle and everything. But I think 90% of world currency transactions are still in the dollar. And since the sanctions have been put on Russia, I believe, and I'm sure Britt Gillette will correct me if I'm wrong, because he talks about this a lot. The dollar is actually a little bit stronger now than it was, but we have massive economic problems. I mean, commercial real estate, banks, the stock market is way overvalued. You may have noticed inflation. Like if you go to Five Guys and get a single burger and a soft drink and fries, you're like $21 or something ridiculous. I mean, even what In-N-Out is like $11 or $12. Crazy. So they're looking at central bank digital currencies. Here's the yuan. They want to maybe do a digital yuan. But if you think the U.S. economy is in the dumper, China's even worse. And China has, remember all these ghost cities that China built? Well, now their population's declining. They don't have people for them now. What's going to happen in 10 or 15 years when there's millions and millions and millions and tens of millions of people less in China? And there's not an immigration pipeline that can fill all those spaces up. The world is in a very big state of flux. So here's a good article from Seth Fransman this morning about BRICS. BRICS showcases emergence of a non-Western world order. You can go to the Jerusalem Post and read that. I would highly recommend it. It's a very good article by Seth. And so they're trying to figure out, I mean, Putin is proposing we're going to have our own platform for currency. And the question is, how quickly can they get this done? Because it would be a huge game changer in the world. It would really tip the world balance of power. It would make us very irrelevant. And I think they may get there eventually. And I will say this, that things happen more quickly now than they used to. who had, Five Guys burger and drinking a fry for $21 on your end time bingo card, step forward and say that. And everything is just accelerated like crazy. So I have some other stuff, but I'm going to exercise mercy, and we'll save that for another time. I will do a talk with Pete Garcia on Thursday, I think at 4 o'clock Eastern. We're just going to talk about geopolitics. And I have a very cool graphic that I made up for our title slide, but you'll have to get on the Fellowship Bible Chapel YouTube channel and subscribe and like to get notified about that when I get that put up. And then in a week from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'll be at the End of the World Conference in Temecula. I'll also be at Calvary Chapel, the Harbor, and Huntington Beach on election night at 7 p.m. I told Tom Hughes this week, I said, that might be the End of America preview of the End of the World Conference that we'll be doing on Tuesday night, live at Huntington Beach. So, crazy world. So things are really accelerating. They're really converging. But there's logistics issues. These things just don't come out of thin air. They have to have systems built up to support them. And they may be being built behind the scenes that we don't know about yet. Things can change very rapidly. There's a lot of stuff going on with artificial intelligence. This is in Wired magazine. A Neuralink rival says its eye implant restored vision in blind people. And if you remember, I've talked about this before. I'm sitting in Jerusalem at the Christian Media Summit 2 years ago, December 2022. ChatGPT was released the week before. And one of the guys, Israeli business guy, very excited about ChatGPT. This is amazing. This is incredible. This is world-changing. And I think it is, and it's going to be. It's tech intrusion on an epic scale. I had a quote from Yuval Noah Harari, our favorite friend here, talking about these people running AI aren't to be trusted. This is one of them talking. But I remember the business guy at the media summit, he goes, this is amazing. Look at all the stuff. Look at what Neuralink is coming out with. Neuralink had just released all of its thing, and he says, we will make the lame walk. We will make the blind see. We will make the deaf hear. And those are signs associated with Yeshua, Mashiach, Jesus, the Messiah. And the tech guys are saying, like, we're going to do all of this. And now here's somebody, a rival to Neuralink, saying we're already starting to restore vision in blind people. This does seem to be, can we agree this is end times type stuff? And we've seen nothing yet. So pray for safety of people that are running for office, and if your conscience tells you to go vote, go vote. If you do vote, vote the right way. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I can tell you who's not a good choice, for sure. And you're going to see propaganda over the next 10 days like you've never seen before. Believe me. And pray for Mika Brzezinski that she'll be able to get into a mental ward someplace to help her with her meltdown that she had the other day. So, okay, let's pray. Lord, thanks so much for your word. Thanks for giving us ideas about how these things were going to go as we approach the return of Jesus, the Messiah, to rule and reign in Jerusalem. Give us wisdom, understanding, and help us to use these things as an avenue to share the gospel with those around us. And bless us this week in Jesus' name. Amen.